Okay, good morning. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. We're going to try something new this morning, and I appreciate your attention and patience maybe and flexibility here. Mr. Molina emailed me in late August explaining that he and Dr. Charleglio had just successfully completed a fishbowl activity as part of the football program's character development series. He and Dr. Char had discussed in front of the football players different ways of thinking about raising, teaching, and coaching boys, I think. I believe that conversation can be boiled down to this. Dr. Char doesn't think you're special. Mr. Molina does, as long as you strive to make a difference in the world. Is that about it, Dr. Char? Dr. Char doesn't think you're special. Some of you have, I know, practiced fishbowl conversations in Mr. Wren's English classes, and I imagine they happen on all three campuses in the tri-school community. The activity is simple. A pair or a small group have a discussion while others listen and analyze what's being discussed and how the conversation is progressing. Mr. Molina's August request was to do a fishbowl during an assembly, and so here we are. Max Carneal, are you already asleep there, friend? Please sit up. Can you fight that, please, a little harder? Sit up for me. Sit up. Okay. Okay. Okay, so what's the idea here, right? What are the intended outcomes? We hope you will learn from the way these two discuss a challenging topic. We hope you'll see how disagreements can remain civil. We hope you'll remember the importance of listening and communicating and treating each other with dignity and respect. And I know that your teachers and advisors have made space for this this year to discuss current events in your classes, maybe during advisory. And I trust that you see the value in that, especially considering the highly divisive nature of our current political and cultural climate. Finally, and I hope that you will reach out to me, faculty members and students, finally, I think we're working to make this Assembly Fishbowl, we hope it's the first of a series. We hope that we can continue to do this. I know Dr. Kelly has been in touch on behalf of the History Department, and I hope students will reach out to me as well. Okay, so here's this morning's topic. Many of the adults in the room, and maybe some of the students, have read a letter written by the headmaster at Trinity School in Manhattan. As part of his welcome back remarks in August, Mr. Allman is his name, Mr. Allman appealed to the Trinity School community to, quote, build a home together. He referenced Jonathan Sacks, who's the chief rabbi of the United Congregations of Britain and the Commonwealth, asking his school community to, quote, abandon the notion of a social contract to guide our understanding of community, and instead use the notion of covenant to imagine our role within our community. Sacks writes, in a contract, what matters is that both gain. In a covenant, what matters is that both give. Mr. Allman continued, in opposition to the radical disconnection in the world beyond our walls, he asked families to, quote, build a school counterculture that enhances student well-being. He continued, quoting from the school's mission statement, let's build transformational opportunities to engage the city, nation, and world, to develop courageous citizens eager to serve our neighbors and to give generously and joyously to others. His language and the references to the school mission statement likely sound familiar. Loyola Blakefield's banner, or it used to be a banner on the wall, was building men for others, right? And part of our mission statement reads, Gilman is a diverse community dedicated to educating boys in mind, body, and spirit. We seek to, quote, produce men of character and integrity who have the skills and ability to make a positive contribution to the communities in which they live and work. So with this in mind, and we're going to ask Dr. Char and Mr. Molina to step up on stage, here is the prompt. Can and should educational institutions create an experience and expect their students to feel an obligation to act for the benefit of society at large? Want to hear that one more time? Yes. Can and should educational institutions create an experience and expect their students to feel an obligation to act for the benefit of society at large?
those doggies? How's the doggies? How are they doing? Yeah, you know, we got a new puppy. I smell it on me right now. It's disgusting. But, you know.
It's probably bigger than mine already.
Really? Yeah.
So hang on a second. Can you guys hear them?
Oh.
That's because we forgot to turn on our mic.
I turned mine on. Hello?
There we go.
There we go.
There
Sorry.
we go. So we're talking about our dogs, our puppies. We're warming up by, like,
Relating to each other.
being human. So we both suffer the life of dog
Yeah. How big's your dog now?
servants. I'm a dog servant.
A dog servant. That's kind of what I am.
Mine is about this
How many
big.
pounds?
She's about 10 pounds.
Okay, so she's midway between my very large dog and my very small dog.
So what do you think
Yeah.
about this?
This thing that we're talking about?
whole getting these boys to care about something other than themselves type thing.
Well, I find it, quick aside. We talked about this last night, and do we want to plan or not?
Right.
And we kind of felt no. So it's better if it's organic, which is different from the way we did it with the football team. So this is not the special thing. This is, so the way I think about it is that one of the major problems that the educational system, especially at higher ed, is facing right now is that we keep churning out these students that are following a formula. We're creating a formula saying, you complete this thing and you will be complete. But it doesn't take any type of creativity on their part or any type of, especially passion on their part to actually do that. So let's set out, you need to do service for the school. If I've told you you need to do service for the school, then in order for you to succeed, you know you have to do the service. You do the service not because you want to, but because you have to fulfill fill the equation.
It makes me think about the purpose of schools, right? Like, is our purpose to credentialize kids and churn out these kids who have all of the boxes checked so that they can go on to the next kind of race to run? Or are we building men? Are we building young people who will, at some level, engage with the world in a way that's not just in service, but partly in service to themselves, but also in service to something greater?
Yeah.
Are we responsible for making men, or are we responsible for churning out students who will go and do
Copies
big
of
things?
themselves. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I guess that's an open question.
Did you do volunteer work and stuff when you were?
I did not. I think, the question that comes up for me when thinking about any big question, I start to think in form and function. My students know this. I've been saying this all morning. And so what form does this social responsibility take, right? Like, what form does it take? Is it charity? Is it going out and talking to young kids? Is it going out and building a home for someone, for Habitat Humanity? What form does it take? And I think that's open-ended, right? Like, we can interpret and be creative about that. And in my life, the form it generally took was arts, poetry, going places and teaching kids to write and trying to engage them in being critical thinkers creatively. And I don't know if that would really qualify for what Mr. Allman was proposing. And I wonder, when we start putting these categories of, like, being responsible for the world, are there a bunch of assumptions underneath that? That we would go out and give money, or we go out and build a home? Is it okay to go out and sit with the kid and, talk about poetry? Is that actually doing something?
Is it worthwhile for the educational system to actually mandate that you go and do that thing rather than you passionately wanting to do that thing? I think that you need to actually want to do the thing.
Right.
And so if you don't want to, I got to get this done. Anyone who's Catholic here who has to get confirmed, you have to do a certain amount of service, right?
Yeah.
So that's from my experience, and that could be torturous. Listening to us talk could be torture right now.
Right.
Yeah.
We need some songs and stuff to break it up. But what my parents, I think, would say, who were staunch Catholics, and what I think we as coaches, if we were on the football field, would say is, like, you may not want to do it, but this is building character, right? Like, it's building some strain of yourself that you may not be mature enough to recognize needs building. But me as an adult, us as educational institutions with 100 years of wisdom of seeing boys mature, we know that you need to be pushed to do certain things that will make you a better man.
To what end?
I think either side of it. I think that what's difficult about this conversation is that it starts to become polemic, right? It's like Dr. Char doesn't care anything about the world. He wants you to go out and just do whatever you want, race each other. You know, Lord of the Flies it until, you know, Booker runs the school. You know, which may not be a bad thing because he's an intelligent, really thoughtful guy, but like, you know.
And he's not here right now.
He's not here. Yes. But ultimately we want the same thing. Like we want to know what's best for society. Is it best for people to be individually motivated, or is it best for people to think collectively? But we want the same thing. We want what's best
Which
for
is
society.
what, though? Is that what we want?
I think so.
Okay, another aside. This is not necessarily our personal opinions. We're just trying to have a conversation that's sort of intellectual and fun. I'm gonna take. Is it really? So go backwards and look at what is the point of the service in the first place? What does service do for you? For me, it made me feel good. Isn't that a selfish thing?
Yes.
Right. So what about building better men to go out of Gilman and go forth into the world and change the world? Is it to change the world?
No, I have a young daughter, and I don't want her messing with crazy dudes. I want good dudes out there in the world, so she has some good choices if she chooses dudes.
Okay. So there's this you talked about working as a society towards the greater good of the society, and I'm going to step back and actually I'm a biologist, of course, but I study history as well, and I think that historically and certainly biologically, every behavior we have is for self-preservation, and that may not. You've all probably heard of altruism, and I would claim there is no such thing as altruism. Altruism is you see something that looks like altruism in the animal kingdom, but it's always to defend your genes, so your sibling, your children, and so ultimately everything we do is selfish. If you want me to save the world by admitting that climate change is not a hoax, which is hard for me to do, that was a joke. All right, so then you need to make it worthwhile for me, right? And so now there was just I think there was just Mr. Morrison was just telling me there was a new poll out about where's Mr. Morrison? Right, there's a new poll out that's saying that most Americans now believe that climate change is a real thing, right?
Yeah, they believe it's a real thing, but they don't believe that they personally are going to be very affected.
Right, and they never asked the question, did you cause it? Which is also, that's an inconvenient, or that's a convenient omission, right? So is it going to affect me, is the question. Am I going to change my behavior? No, not until it actually affects me. I think this is a selfish thing. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
I agree. I don't think it's a bad thing if your understanding of yourself is related to being a part of a species, a human species, because all of the creatures we're talking about that kind of compete for resources, or the beings that compete for resources, they think of themselves as a species for the most part, and they interact in ways that will continue the genetic pool that creates that species to go on, right? So if we as individuals, right, go for what we want, ultimately what we want should be tied into some greater idea of what humanity needs, or the alternative is we fight it out. We battle it out until a few of us are left, until Thomas Booker is left, and then I guess the idea is that those two things aren't mutually exclusive, right? Like we just learned about Thomas Paine, who was one of the founders of America, and libertarianism leans heavily on his ideas. And what he talks about is, when he talks about building America, is like, and this was said yesterday, we have to get together to build something that we can't do alone. When you do that, that's when you become human. That's when you become part of a species and not just a creature in the world soaking up resources.
Okay, but doesn't that kind of presume that there's going to be some sort of equal effort from all of the constituent parts?
That's the hope.
And so if I if I go and I teach everybody exactly the same, and I teach everybody that they're all special, right? I don't know what the definition of special is, if everybody's special, but okay, let's say they're all special, and so they're all the same thing, but they don't really want to be doing the service. They don't really want to be, but they've been given this baseline. It's human nature to kind of be lazy. It's actual nature. It's beyond human nature. It's actually biological nature to put in as little effort into something as possible.
I would have to disagree fully on that point, because I feel like if you've seen a tree grow out of the side of a cliff, and you've seen ants cling together to float on the top of a flood, you see life clawing to be, clawing to live, and doing its best at all turns to find light, to find nutrients in the soil, breaking through rocks. And I think it's our nature to do our best at everything. That's what life needs us all to do our best individually.
Yeah, so that's some great examples. But that one, it shows that you're talking about survive. So the minimum amount of effort to survive, one. But two, that extraordinary things happen in adversity. So those are adverse environments where the best people that we raise into adulthood are going to be the ones who face the most adversity. Right, and they're going to, and I would actually say those people, assuming they do great things beyond their capacity, beyond their baseline, those are special people.
So why don't we give them adversity by forcing them to do service? Maybe that's the adversity, is that they have to go out and do something they don't want to do, something they don't understand, and we frame it as teachers. We give them the context that allows them to draw nutrients from that experience. But ultimately, they have to go out and face some adversity. They have to go out into a community they're afraid of. Go out into a community they've been told never to even think about, and face adversity. See what adversity looks like. Engage with it. And we as teachers can give them the context that helps them get something out of that. Hopefully, right? Hopefully.
So you wanna actually frame that as that's an interesting way of putting it. I can buy that.
And maybe that's a good place for us to conclude. So thank you. And again, I think the idea is to just get this started, to try this out and see how it goes. I think the hope is to set it up a little bit more thoughtfully, a little bit more intentionally next time by maybe letting you know that what the topic is beforehand, giving you an opportunity to craft some questions, maybe setting a little bit more time aside for the 2 people or the 3 people, maybe including students who plan to have the conversation. So please look out for that kind of communication so that we can continue to maybe dig into stuff that's not so easy to process. Anything else to add to that, gents?
Kiss the puppies for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kiss the puppies. All right, Mr. Dubeck.
Hope everybody has a great weekend south.
Yeah, that's actually a good argument. I never thought of that. That's a good argument. That's it.
Do that more, right? Yeah. I think we have some disagreements.
Well, we keep having them, and so what happened was we were having a conversation about something, and Johnny came in, and he didn't have somebody to give his development talk, and they were like, will you do it? And we're like, let's just continue this conversation. But,
To me, a really good exercise, following up, bring us up to Ryan, would be to generate some discussion with the students about the observations of what y'all are doing to have the conversation. So the fact that you listen to each other, the fact that you acknowledge each other's points, and try to understand each other's points before advancing your own. I mean, that kind of construction of the conversation is really
That's a good idea.
I mean, that conversation could have gone on another 2 hours probably.
Right.
If